Thank you, everyone. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce another one of our young scientists, Mr. Blake Smith. Blake was one of the first young scientists supported by our foundation. When I first met Blake, I was incredibly struck by his intelligence and passion for research. He's currently a junior at Yale, majoring in molecular and cellular biology. And his biological career, no pun intended, started in the lab when he, at the age of 16, joined us to work on a project studying the role of splicing of the KLF6 gene. From this work, he went on to win first place at the Intel YSF competition, went on to spend 2 years in the laboratory studying and discovering new molecules to target proteins that were before undruggable. And this work, along with his colleague who's here tonight, Mr. and I'm sure I hope Dr. Vikram Gidwani one day, another young scientist supported by our foundation, won fourth place in the National Siemens competition, a prize that resulted in them meeting the president and the head of our National Cancer Institute, an incredible accomplishment for individuals at such a young age. From this work that they performed, Dan McQuaid, another YSF scholar who you heard from last year, went on to continue and expand much of their work, being named a few years ago an Intel finalist, and more recently being on a patent with me on a discovery that he made in my laboratory. And it is these discoveries that I believe one day will help transform the way we treat cancer. Blake has continued to be incredibly successful at Yale, being named one of the 26 most impressive students at the university by Business Insider. Blake, well, impressive. And I have no doubt that he will emerge as a true leader in academic medicine and contribute to biomedical research in ways that will directly impact human health. He is one of the greatest single individuals that I've ever worked with in my entire career, from faculty to postdoc to graduate student to high school student to college student. And he's an individual that makes everyone around him better in both science and life. It is with deepest honor and privilege that I introduce Blake Smith.
I was going to say I have nothing to auction. Good evening, chefs, sponsors, doctors, scientists, mom, dad. As Gautam just mentioned, my name is Blake Smith, and I'm currently a junior at Yale. Anytime I've ever heard someone other than myself announce those experiences and accomplishments, I honestly can't believe them. It's surreal because I wouldn't be here both figuratively and literally if it weren't for the generosity and graciousness of one person, and that's Dr. Gautam Narla. Now that might sound like a mawkish sentiment, but it couldn't be more true. 5 years ago today, I was an uncertain sophomore in high school with a general interest in science. High school chemistry, physics, biology, it all seemed like the same rote way of teaching the basics of each field, all devoid of the scientific inquiry that defined these fields. I wanted to see what it was like to tackle some of these research questions and be part of a team that discovered something. For high school students, that goal is quite inconceivable and unlikely, as many of you may know. But as that sophomore in high school, I emailed over 20 or so PhDs in the field of biology at institutions spanning the length of Manhattan. From the no's to the no responses, I was certainly dejected. But there was hope in the form of the only yes I ever received at the time, and that was from Dr. Narla. That single yes was the opportunity of a lifetime, as I spent 4 summers in Dr. Narla's labs at Mount Sinai and at Case Western doing research that is changing the way that we treat cancer. I've learned about cancer genetics, biological signal transduction pathways, protein phosphatases, kinases, and drug development, just to name a few aspects of biology in those 4 short summers. As if that was never enough, Dr. Naller's labs are home to some of the most brilliant scientists that are here tonight in the field, which made lab meetings some of the most intellectually challenging conversations I've ever had. Outside of lab, another student sponsored by the Young Scientists Foundation, Vikram Gimwani, who's here tonight, and I entered the Siemens competition, like Gautam just mentioned, a national science competition for high school students with our research collected over the course of the 2 summers spent with Dr. Narla at Mount Sinai. We were lucky enough to compete at the final leg of the competition in Washington, D.C. against other student projects. And I think it was pretty telling that out of the 12 projects at the Siemens competition that year, Vic and I were the only ones whose mentor actually attended the presentation and the award ceremony, and this was simply out of his sheer excitement for us. That's what a true mentor is. Not only did Gautam personally mentor us through meetings and trainings before the competition, provide us with nearly unlimited access to resources during the summers to obtain the project's data, sponsor us on behalf of the Young Scientists Foundation, but he also endowed us with a lifetime worth of experience and knowledge and continues to keep in touch with us on a monthly basis. And that's something that I hope other students get to experience firsthand through this foundation. This entire speech I've been saying my mentor, when truthfully Gautam has been a mentor to so many students, graduate, undergraduate, and even high school students. Without him, none of my short career in biology would ever be possible. In fact, any list of accomplishments that I may ever have will always be attributable to him, my parents, his mentorship, and this foundation, for which I am eternally grateful. From the moment I stepped into his lab, Gautam has treated me like any of the other more senior scientists, keeping me on my toes, pushing me towards asking the challenging questions that were the basis for our work in the lab. In short, mentorship and this foundation's support have allowed me to achieve more than I could have ever imagined, and I could give back in the only way that I see fit, by continuing my career in this absolutely incredible field. So while I have nothing to auction, I want to thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.